couple minutes to try to hook up to the Wi-Fi itself. If it still doesn't work, we'll pass it back. We're good.
You good? Okay. Paulette, I'm about to slam the gavel down.
I'm paying attention.
I don't want to shock you. Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the time and place for the June 20, 2022 regular board meeting of the Marshalltown School District Board of Education. Welcome to those of you joining us here in person. Welcome to anybody tuning in on the live stream or watching later on. Before we get going, we'll do introductions for the folks here at the board table. To my right, board members Zach Wall, Bonnie Lowry, and Jan McGinnis. To my left, Karina Hernandez, Leah Stanley. Joining me at the center table, to my right, Paulette Newbold, the board secretary. To my left, Dr. Theron Schutte, the superintendent of schools. And I am Sean Heitman. We've got a pink sign-up sheet here on the speakers table for anybody who's here to give public comment. Please keep in mind that we allow 5 minutes for public comment, and that Iowa law prohibits discussing specific employees of the district or their job performance. Please also understand that in accordance with board policy, board members may not respond to your comments so that we can comply with open meeting laws. With that, would everybody please join me in reciting the mission of the school district? We develop learners who have the knowledge, skills, and positive mindset to successfully pursue a meaningful future through personalized learning experiences. And now stand as you're able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, we have one change under interagency agreements and contracts. We have an document that needs signed that just acknowledges our knowledge and acceptance of Net High, which we've partnered with for quite some time, going under the ownership of Timberline, which ironically is another partner or vendor that we use for Medicaid reimbursement.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Second.
Lowry, Stanley, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries 6-0. Adam?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So tonight I just had an update for you all from Washington, D.C. So as you guys know, we had 2 students compete at the national level for the National History Day contest, which is kind of an exceptional accomplishment by itself. They were also, in addition, their exhibit was competitively selected to be put on virtual display at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. So they were one of only 3 teams in Iowa who were from Iowa to be picked, and I know there were quite a few more teams than just 3 from Iowa. So it was just a very, very cool thing within that already very cool accomplishment of theirs. So. Yeah, that was the update I wanted to share.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
Looking at the consent agenda, we've got minutes from the June 6th meeting. Dr. Ryan, anything of note in personnel?
Two quick things. One, we have the retirement of Jerry Flathers, who is our mechanic. Do you mind clicking on that? I can read that. Transportation Director Rex Kozak says that Jerry has been an important part of the transportation team during his time serving the district. Jerry is a very good mechanic, body repair specialist, and overall problem solver. Jerry has been an asset to the transportation office by helping write different software programs to meet the ever-changing needs of the department. He has contributed greatly to the district through his involvement in the transportation department, which I will say I believe is 32 years. The transportation department wishes Jerry the very best in retirement. And I will also add that Jerry has served as the union representative for the buildings and grounds and full-time mechanic. And so he and I have worked very closely, and it's a big loss to the district, but we're excited for him, and he definitely will be missed. The other thing that I wanted to note, would you mind please opening that? Yep. You'll notice a change to the look of the consent agenda, and this is because we were duplicating efforts on many fronts. Having similar information in multiple formats, and so the business office and the HR department got together and decided this is a kind of a waste of effort, and so we are moving to this. This is I will be presenting this each meeting. It has all of the same information, plus a little more actually, that you've seen in the past. It's just, a different format. It is a PDF, so you're able to zoom in as much as needed, but obviously it's a very different look, but all the same information. Just wanted you to be aware of that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking at interagency agreements and contracts, we've got a subscription and services agreement with Slate Solutions to track community service hours for high school students, a 2-year renewal contract with NutraSlice software for creation of digital menus and signage, a 3-year Admentum courseware renewal, an agreement with Publishing Concepts to publish an oral history publication for Marshalltown High School, a 3-year renewal with Cisco for more licenses, a quote from ByteSpeed to purchase gaming computers for esports at the Marshalltown High School, and the asset purchase agreement that Dr. Schutte referenced with Iowa Net High Academy. Questions about any of those contracts or agreements? Looking at open enrollments, there are 3, all continuations. Paulette, anything to note in bills or in the monthly financial report? And then we've got several donations to approve for the aquatics display board at Marshalltown High School. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
Lyra Hernandez, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0. Nobody has signed up, so Amber, you're up.
Hello, good evening. First off, we're dressed a little casual. We've been outside for most of today, so.
Sorry about that. That's why I brought the hat.
No worries. Amber Danielson, I'm the Executive Director of the Marshall County Arts and Culture Alliance, and with me is Stephen Johnson, the artist of the piece that is currently being installed at the Marshalltown Performing Arts Center. So after your meeting, please drive home that way. We're expecting it to be a couple days before it's officially complete, but I am thrilled to have Stephen here with me. This has been a long time in the making project. Several of you, Bonnie and Theron's wife Connie, served on our selection committee. The Auditorium Foundation Board worked really hard to secure grants and funding to make this project a possibility, and I'm super proud of our continued partnership with the district and the amazing artwork that we have on our high school campus. I think we can be really proud of that too. You'll notice that the piece is really coming together, and the now north side of the roundhouse and south side are just exploding and truly having that wow factor as we enter our amazing facilities. So I'm going to hand it over to Stephen, tell you just a little bit about the piece. We won't stay long. We'll get back here to
Colorful,
work.
bye. Well, you'll see it's based on musical notations, and so it celebrates everything that goes on in your performance center. And then there's 3 kinetic pieces up top that reflect the spoken word, theater, all that you have, and they move, so they have sort of a mouth kind of quality that's all very colorful. The piece is titled Scherzo, which many of you know in music has kind of a leitmotif, wonderful themes. Some of my favorite scherzos are by Chopin, but that's a personal preference. But anyway, they're really dynamic and exciting, and I think really speaks to your performance center, which is dynamic and exciting and international, as I understand too, which is very cool. And I got to visit a preview of the interior, which is phenomenal, really, really stunning. And I love how it curves around, and so it echoes the front, the circular 360 degrees. And so we can't wait till it snows and see it in the different contexts. When it rains, you'll see the sun rising upon the sculpture, and it'll illuminate the Performance Arts Center. Then you'll see the sunset. You'll get different shadows and plays like that. So the parallaxes that'll happen within the sculptural piece, I think you'll find, hopefully, a pleasurable experience. Anyway, there you go.
Thank you for your support, and we're really proud. This is Stephen's first piece in Iowa, which we're really proud of. So any questions, or Bonnie, if you have anything to add?
No, we're just glad to have you. It's my understanding that you do more than just art. I mean, you are a writer. You've been published. Going to spend some time at the library with our children. So you are an artist, an all-around artist. So thank you very much for your work.
Well, I appreciate it. But I think that's all I got to get out of here and hang the
Yes, he will be at the library doing story time at 10:30 on Wednesday. He's popping into Rotary tomorrow and doing a Meet the Artist at 11:30 on Wednesday. So we're keeping him very busy.
I have a book coming out in September called My Big Silver Rocket Ship. I have these interactive books, and you can build a rocket ship, this retro kind of thing. It's got
nice.
10 shapes, and it's got a launching pad, and it's about 10 inches. Anyway, so you can build your own sculpture. So I love the idea of everybody can make something, and I have a robot kind of, you can look it up, but that kind of thing. And maybe we'll make a Marshalltown pop-up book. The sculpture could be really cool as a gift, right, to give people and, celebrate your community that way. Anyway, thank you for your attention.
Hey, Amber, would
Yes.
you real quick remind everybody when the reveal celebration is
thank you.
taking place?
Yes, so next Thursday, June 30th, from 5 to 7, we're going to do a ribbon cutting in partnership with the Chamber. We're going to have a few student performances, thanks to Amy Ossie, and then the Marshtown Municipal Band will be performing there at 6 o'clock instead of typically down in the 13th Street District. We're going to have them in front of the Performing Arts Center, so we will have an official reveal and celebration of the piece. Thank you for reminding me of that.
You bet.
Thank you for your support, too, and for picking the piece.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Clean it up for the...
Hello.
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 Well, good evening, everybody. I'm here to share with you just kind of a wide overview of the performance of our English learners on our ELPA 21 summative language assessment. And I'm Rachel Inks. I'm your district program coordinator of English learner and migrant programs. Just want to begin with a little bit of a timeline just to kind of walk you through what that ALPA 21 looks like across the course of a year. So in February and March, we administered the annual summative assessment, and this year we administered that to 1,608 students in the district. That's a wide undertaking. About mid-May, those results come in. We have that district-wide access piece, and then we also have access to view the state comparatives, only through the lens of what their proficiency rates were as obtained across the grade levels. And then our parents are also notified of that assessment through their own child's receipt of their individual score report mailed home this year. In December, those results become available to the public, and it's a part of the Iowa School Performance Profile. And it's important because that accountability measure that measures the students' English language progress, which is their growth toward earning proficiency, accounts for 10% of every building's index score. So it is a factor for us in Marshalltown, should a building have at least 20 English learners within their attendance center that fall between the areas of 3rd grade through 12th grade. So every single one of our attendance centers in Marshalltown does have that end count of 20 across 3rd through 12th grade, with the exception of Marshalltown Virtual Academy has not had 20 at least English learners joining in 3rd through 12th grade. So you'll see the accountability measures lifted forward before you. And we'll also spend a little bit of time just talking about English language proficiency, which is also reported through the Iowa School Performance Profile, but it's not part of that accountability measurement. The first thing I want to talk to you about is 4 slides that relate to the growth. And I want to go over a little bit of the historical lens here. Under ESSA, Iowa has 4 years of data that would show you how students are growing toward English proficiency. And when you take a look at this graph in front of you, you'll see the bar line representation of that. Nope, not a bar line, line graph representation of that, with Marshalltown in blue and Iowa in red. And it's kind of easy to see in 2018, we were about at the same point of proficiency as Iowa was. We went above them in 2019, and then 2020, we had COVID closure upon us. At that point in time, we had about 300 students that were not yet finished taking all of the subdomains for ALPA 21. And as a result, you're not able to then earn proficiency because you haven't completed all the assessments. So we dipped below Iowa in that year significantly. We had 300 of our about approximate 1,600 students that were just not able to finish the test and work toward that ability to earn proficiency. And a lot of those kids were at 5th and 6th grade. And I just want to bring that to your attention because 5th and 6th grade is really kind of a sweet spot. It's where that language acquisition piece starts to solidify, and you have a good solid amount of 5 years of English language development. And that's also where Iowa also cuts off that funding aspect. So we do see our higher rates of proficiency happening at Lenahan typically. And in comparison, in 2020, Iowa advertised that they were 93% finished with their assessment. So we fell a little bit below where we would want it to be at the conclusion of no more school in that year. And then 2021, we fell just as the state did. We knew we had a significant COVID impact on our students. We know that our students that are most marginalized really experienced that biggest response as a reaction to COVID closure. So you'll see that indicated on the bar graph. If you want to look at those numbers, they're also down on the right-hand corner. The part that I'm most pleased and really is a story of recovery for our students is that our progress, our growth that's working toward English language development is on an uptick. In fact, we have crunched the numbers and been able to look at the growth by looking at match scores from 2021 and 2022, aligning every English learner's performance in the school system at 3rd grade through 12th grade. Again, 3rd grade through 12th grade is critical because that's an alignment with the accountability measures through the Iowa School Performance Profile. And we would project that in 2022, we are popping back up to 67.3% of our students met that rate of growth in the district. And so that's above where we have been in the past 4 years. And we're excited about that progress. We know that we were able to take advantage of that full year of instruction, and that matters. That matters for our students, and matters for them learning English language development. It matters for that content knowledge as well. Just want to catch up to me turning notes here.
Maybe it's a good time to ask if anyone has questions.
I do, actually.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm a little bit familiar with the test because I worked at Miller for years. So I thought there were separate scores for listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So when they are described as proficient, does that mean they're proficient in all 4 domains?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jan. So in order to earn this, the mark, or earn the count, the tally toward making growth, you take the sum of all the level changes that the student has earned in all of the subdomains, which are the listening test, the reading test, the writing test, and the speaking test. So you look at that level change. So for example, if a student was a 4 and they are a 5 now, that's a +1. However, in another score, if they were a 5 and they moved to a 3, they slid back 2. So in order to qualify for achieving growth, your sum of all those level changes has to amount to +1 over the course of the entire assessment. Or you have to hold proficiency at the maximum level of the language of one of the subdomains as well.
Okay. Oh, so if you top out the test.
Right, if you top out the
that
test.
makes sense.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Just can't go any further than the test result yields. So I consider bringing before you growth data that looked at listening and speaking and reading and writing across the 12 grade levels, and then I did the math on that. So 12 times 4 is 48, and I know that's really long. So I just decided to bring you the overall rate. So I analyzed all the growth measures that go into the calculations, then took a look at the number of students that would count towards growth. We do know that we have some highlights and also some areas for concern, and I'll bring those forward a little bit and then talk through those just briefly as I wrap up the presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. The next slide is really busy. I really wanted to draw your attention to the blue parts. The blue parts really speak to what would be projected for the accountability measure on the Iowa School Performance Profile for our elementary buildings for the percent of 3rd and 4th graders who are growing toward English proficiency. And overall, remember that marker in the top right-hand corner is where our district is measuring toward English proficiency. And so each of those attendance centers are highlighted within. Those do differ when you're comparing the English learners in 1st grade through 4th grade who have met growth. Kindergartners, we do have a couple kindergartners only because they have repeated kindergarten for the 2nd year, nothing significant. And I really didn't want to bring those forward, those end counts forward for you in case they were too easy to discern who those students might be. So I left those off for our conversation today. But if a building were able to capture that K through 4 growth, you can see that there'd be a little bit of a difference in their overall growth. In particular, that really is noted at Franklin, with their 3rd and 4th performance a little bit below where their K through 4 performance would be should Iowa allow us to use that wide look at all the learners in the building. But in all, the good news here is that 3rd and 4th grade trend above what our district rate is, which is coming in at 67.3%. We have 3rd and 4th grade sitting between 76 and 77%, reaching growth this year for ELPA 21. The next slide I wanted to show you is our attendance centers that situate across 512. Again, I'm not bringing forward Marshall Virtual Academy because there's the end count less than 20. So you can see the cluster scores, 5th and 6th grade, and Miller Middle School, and Marshtown High School across there as well. Overall, Lenahan and Marshtown High School met or exceeded that average district growth, with Miller falling below that. And this is where I did want to pause a little bit and mention that we're also looking at our overall growth rates across the K-12 system through that lens of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So trends show that listening shows that 46% of our students grow in listening every year. And remember, in order to grow, you have to grow in one area. So that's why we're at 67.3%. So in listening, we see 46% of our students grow every year in listening. And conversely, 16% of our students also decline this year in listening as well. Speaking has about 44% of our students growing this year. And conversely, 25% also showed a decline. And wrapping up that same trend with writing, writing shows that 38% of our students are exceeding growth and 9% are showing an area of decline. That's a particular point of pride for us. Writing is generally the culminating event in order for English learners to demonstrate that full proficiency. We know that students are writing because of what they read, because of the conversations they've had, and because of all the opportunities for shared readings and all those good things that come into that forming of language. So that's a particular exciting point for me, that writing really was significant there. And then reading, 33% of our students met growth or exceeded growth, and then 20% did show a decline. Again, I just want to pause there. That is something to take a look at in the reading part. That 20% decline is something we want to take a look at. In particular, when I just want to also mention some bright spots. Grade 2 consistently showed, if you flip back one slide, please, grade 2 consistently showed in all domains, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, they had the lower rates of decline and the higher rates of growth, which is exciting. Grades 4, 5, 6, and 11 nearly always had the lower rates of decline and higher rates of growth. So that's 4, 5, 6, and 11. I think I said that the right way. Second time maybe. We do have couple outliers that are worthy of attending to. We noticed that grade 7 had the highest rates of decline and the lowest rates of growth across all domains. That's definitely an area of growth for us. And then grade 1 was where we really saw a significant decline in those reading scores. So that made up that 20% decline. So grade 1 showed the highest rates of decline across speaking and reading. And that was tempered with, interestingly enough, listening had the lowest rates of decline for that. So, and then the highest rates of growth. So, gonna have, definitely have one emerging as higher and stronger than the other. And sometimes that's a function of the student's own security level in speaking and presenting in languages, or sometimes it's just a matter of just where they're at with their language trajectory. Either one, it's really a pause for deeper conversations and wonders about that. Each building has already begun to look at their own performance rates as it pertains to all their grade levels and all their language domains. And then just once again, I just want to remind us that as a system, we were still at 67.3% in our 3rd through 12th grade, and looking at that level change across all those areas. We're going to go ahead and move on to 3 slides that show the rate of English learners and how they are achieving that full proficiency measure. So under ESSA, we have 3 years of data about how students are earning their full proficiency. In order to earn that full proficiency, they have to be at the 4 or 5, which is the 2 highest levels in reading and speaking and writing and listening. Each of those levels cannot dip below that level of 4 or 5. You have to have all 4 there at the same time. Prior to the COVID closure, again, we had the same markers. We are blue and Iowa's red. And prior to that COVID closure, we had a test interruption occurring, and our rate was trending above Iowa at that point in time. And then I mentioned earlier that in 2020, we had 300 students who were not able to even finish their tests. So again, we're seeing that impact here. And we do know that with 2021, we had, again, an impact from our lack of offering an entire school year. So we're also recovering from that. We did slide in that case with respect to, like Iowa did. We didn't quite slide as fast at the rate that Iowa did, but it was still significant. And if you move on to the next slide, you'll be able to see where we project to be in 2022. So we were able to deliver and administer all assessments in 2021 and all assessments in 2022, and the rise compared to 21 and 2022 is increasing. We moved from 9.5 to 10.5% proficient in the district. The state moved from 10.8 to 11.5. So we're pleased about that rate of increase compared to the state as well. And we're going to look briefly at the set of the district and Iowa comparatives here. So I mentioned that we can see the proficiency rates of Iowa when we gain our access to our data. And in this case, what I did for you was showed all of the students who took the assessment, how many tested proficient. I tend to not be very alarmed when our students do not score proficient at kindergarten and first grade. I am not a proponent of early exit. I believe our students need more time in English ELL programming and benefit from that. So I would not be, I'm not looking forward to those numbers climbing in a huge rate, but I do recognize that we are behind the state. And so that is important to note as well. I did use like a gentle coloring. I think you could probably see it better on your screens than I can here. So the borders are significant and that they correspond to where we're at related to Iowa. I'm reaching the end. So, given all that, I just wanted to lift a few highlights before you that we're working on as a system. And I'm sure if I had all of our principals here, they would be eager to tell you too of more of the building-specific plans, but I just wanted to draw these forward for a district lens. In our PK through 4 buildings, we are targeting some new services. You're going to use Title III funds to bring ELL services to our preschool classrooms, and that will happen once on a daily basis during their center's time. And the charge for the ELL teacher is to elicit oral language development, to really get on that ease and that speaking, reciprocal speaking back and forth, have that listening and that speaking activated. We're also increasing ELL teachers from 2 to 3, and that would happen at Fisher, Rogers, and Franklin. That is a use of our Paula, you can help me, our carryover in ELL weighted funds that we're using that to bring that forward right now. Of particular note are the 2 teachers who are joining us from Rogers and Franklin. They are each veteran grade level teachers, Julie Vincent and Amanda Goings. They are, because of voluntarily, they are voluntarily transferring to ELL from general education, and each brings a wealth of knowledge from the classroom lens and understanding that CKLA curriculum, which we also use in ELL services as well. So we're looking forward to that. We need to pause and visit about Miller Middle School here. We're adding on a newcomer and a beginner curriculum to target English language development during WIN time. So using more of that WIN time to really leverage English language development. And we're working through staff turnover in the last couple of years. We're excited about increasing from 2 and then will be 3 veteran teachers who have joined Miller Middle School within the past year or so, and then 1 upcoming that you just approved tonight. And these 3 teachers, Libby Brown, Angie Lovell, and Troy Long, will all round out that ELL co-teaching program. And we believe that with those veteran teacher experiences coupled with the social studies teams are really bring dynamic conversations, dynamic results within the classroom, and really looking at that co-teaching experience. I would want to highlight for you, we still have 1 vacancy to fill. That's not all, but 1 vacancy to fill. It's key at Miller Middle School. It's our bilingual teacher. So at this point in time, we're looking for a bilingual teacher at Miller Middle School. It's relatively important. We do know that we have a significant number of students who want to continue, especially with that dual language programming, to have that continued access to language development in Spanish. So we're really looking at that and being able to find somebody to fill that. At Marshalltown High School, we are going and working, by my office, is working closely with the freshman house. And what we're going to do there is we're really going to amplify those SELA biliteracy efforts. And you might wonder why I'm speaking about that, but it really helps our students, especially our long-term students at this point, to really place that added value on their native language and to really talk to them about the whole picture of solidifying both those languages. So to earn that SELA biliteracy, you need to have that measure in English and that measure in the native language. And if you are addressing the whole child and that wide picture lens at the high school, knowing so many of those students are English learners and have been for quite some time, and that label does follow them, that it's just another way to help them work on that, work through that lens of attaining that English proficiency as well. I'd be open to any questions or wonders you might have.
You've talked about adding the newcomer curriculum for WIN time, so they will be able to actually use the WIN time like a class and teach that on a daily basis?
Yes, they will. They will also have to measure that against any other typical WIN time things that Miller Middle School will want to accomplish during that time, but they are purposefully coupling their most beginning and their newcomer students with those 3 key teachers that I mentioned.
Okay. Yeah, that was my concern, is there's an awful lot going on during that WIN time where your curriculum get used.
Right, yes. So we're using more purposeful assignment of those students to those kids, to those teachers.
Thanks.
They also all have 3 will have different levels so that the students can be fluid among those teachers as well. Mm-hmm. So there will be a rotation of such. If a newcomer, if you will, comes, then they can also move among those 3 teachers as well.
Sounds good.
Are we seeing something specific that's going on in 7th grade as far as the proficiency level? I mean, 2 out of...
Can you scroll back to...
So a particular importance to note here is that, hold on, let me look at this one more time. Yeah. So in general, in Iowa, you can see that the percent proficient of students in Iowa takes a dip at 7th, 8th, and 9th. So we definitely take a bigger dip than Iowa does, in particular with that. It's kind of been a noticeable decline for us in the past few years. So that's why we're really looking at leaning into our veteran teachers that are really working through ELL. We've had a new teacher, and we've had a few different teachers who have been with us a couple times, and so we're just really looking for leadership among those teachers. And we have to also remember too, with 7th graders, this also becomes a reflection on how much content knowledge they've obtained too. So I think if we want to look a little bit more carefully at 7th grade, we want to take a look at lots of measurements of assessments and just take a look to see kind of where kids are falling at on ISASP, which is the content measurement. What do we see on ELPA 21, and kind of make some broader analyses of that.
Of your 1,600 plus students who are English learners, when do they come off that list? You talked about having 4 subtests,
sure,
and getting 4s and 5s.
So right here, Bonnie, on this page right here. So right now, let's just look at 5th grade. 15.3% of those kids are reclassified. They are reclassified to exited English learners.
Right.
So that happens when they reach proficiency, when that magic happens between that reading, writing, listening, and speaking, reaching that level of 4 or 5.
And they just have to do that one time. It doesn't need to be multiple years.
Yep. Iowa changed their exit statuses and to only include because of just making sure that a child has the right to exit the program, and they changed it to only be dependent on the ELPA 21 and not have interdependency with Iowa assessments or ISASP.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that 3rd grade, 2nd and 3rd grade, you're losing a lot of kids then. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's good.
Mm-hmm. Funding follows those students for 5 years of time. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, we know that we have significant amounts of kids who remain unfunded. So it's always our aim to try and really get them learning, growing at those early ages. That's why we're bringing preschool programming forward through Title III, and then really working at that, increasing those 3 teachers at the elementary buildings as well.
At the secondary level, has there been any thought to actually giving them a period a day to work on their language skills?
So we do English language development, specifically with our newcomers and our beginning English learners. If they're a newcomer, they have 2 periods a day, or actually it's a block, if you will.
Right.
And then if they are a beginner student, they have a singleton on a daily basis.
They do.
They
So
do.
that's in addition, like at Miller, that would be in addition to the wind time.
Right. So at the high school, it's in addition to the core classes. There's always a balance between requiring more English language development classes on a high schooler and then closing the window for electives, right? So some of our students are really, really wanting to make sure that they get exposure to those electives, and we want them to have exposure to that. So it's always a delicate balance with that piece of it. That's why we're leaning on co-teaching as
It
well.
gets difficult, yes.
Well, many of those electives are very hands-on courses for which they're probably able to have success right away versus some of the other areas.
Correct.
You didn't mention the statistic that I always love that you speak of is how uniquely different Marshtown is in terms of being ranked 4th in total number of English language students and 4th in population density. And when you look at, I'll probably get these out of order, but when you look at number, it's Des Moines, Sioux City, Iowa City, Marshalltown. So districts that are significantly larger in total student population, but were comparable in numbers of second language students. And then you look at population density, and it's Storm Lake, Denison, Postville, and Marshalltown in density. So it really kind of puts us in a unique position in terms of some of the challenges and future successes that we're able to have.
And that data is compiled every October 1st through our fall state reporting.
And I just have one thing I want to add. So everything that she's highlighted in blue is really relative to that, the Iowa report card or the performance profile. And our surrounding districts would have to have per building 20 or more students to even have some sort of a ELL or English language proficiency marker calculated into their point system. And yet, if you remember back to some of the information Theron shared with us in December, we had many schools that were outperforming other schools locally with that specific score, and they didn't have this component even factored into their formula. So I think there's just a lot of incredible pieces that we highlighted tonight. We will always have growth areas, and we'll always be transparent with you about that. Watching that marker start to tick up in the right direction is incredible, and we know that we've got the right work in place. So, and Rachel's just a wealth of information. So if you have more questions, I'm sure you can touch base with her. She'd be willing to help you in any way.
It's really pretty impressive that our 10th and 11th graders who, because these would be the students that have taken a long time to catch on to the language, but you have a lot of them reaching proficiency doing that sophomore and junior year.
This is why I really want to go into the freshman house and work in CLA biliteracy. We had a lot of people talking a lot with our English learner population about just get this one score done and you too can earn the CLA biliteracy. I can't tell you what a motivational factor that is for our students and for the parents. It's a significant point of pride. And our students, it's taking them a few years to catch on to that we really have to do this and pull it all together, but that's why I want to have more conversation at the freshman house. Yeah. I think we'll grow that and we'll continue to see that number climb as well.
Thank you for your leadership.
Yes.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shauna. Stacy?
Good evening. I'm Stacy Toole Crawford, and I'm the district lead nurse as well as the Marshalltown High School nurse. I'm happy to be here tonight to give you our annual health report. This past school year has been, I call it kind of a transitioning type of year in our health offices. We're still dealing with the remnants of our pandemic, but yet kind of transitioning back to our more normal health offices, which means more health office visits. So during the pandemic, our numbers went down, obviously, with our health office visits based on the fact, one thing, we had hybrid learning. So at Miller Middle School and the high school, we had fewer students, part of the time. So last year, the 2021 school year, our health office visits were down pretty significantly based on that. This year, while we are still kind of dealing with families and staff and working with our Marshall County Public Health to make sure we're still following the guidelines that are being put to us, through the Iowa Department of Public Health. We are still, reeling with some of that this past school year, as well as seeing that increased number in our visits, because students are all back at school and they're having those chronic illnesses again. Whether it be the simple things from the headaches and stomach aches to, more chronic health conditions. And those kids are back in school, a lot of them now. Some of them were doing virtual learning, in the past, and those kids are back now. So, we are seeing an increase in our health office visits, yet we are still transitioning with dealing with our COVID-related questions and issues that go along with that. So, we'll go to that first slide. We haven't had any changes in our health office staff this past year. Similar to what we are seeing in all departments here in our district, as well as I know across the nation, we are struggling with our substitute situation. So school nurses and health aides get sick just like everyone else, and we have to be gone. So we have been very, very fortunate in our past that we have had retired school nurses that have stepped up and, subbed for us. Well, most of them want to be retired now. God bless them. And so we just have not had a lot of other nurses be able to step up because it's a very unique situation. It's a lot of them have full-time jobs, and so it just has to be that special person that can just, come in on a whim to be able to cover for us. So we are actively recruiting substitute nurses for our health offices for sure. The next slide. Just going to kind of look through here. Bullet point number 5 is, where we're continuing to monitor the epidemic, pandemic disease outbreaks. Certainly that is still going on. Certainly more our first semester than the second semester. But even at the end here, as some of you, if you're watching our reports, we did still have cases that we were monitoring and working with families and our local public health to deal with. And then the other I was going to highlight was bullet 9, where we're collaborating with teachers, families, healthcare providers, and community resources for health and safety of students. Just specifically on that one, noted this year, we felt that, we actually did have an increase in our migrant students that were coming in larger volumes. We were having larger groups that came in, families, coming in for work-related, transfers. Some of them coming from other parts of the country, so they did have vaccinations. Some of them coming from other countries. So in our health offices, we worked with, Rachel and her team as connecting these families to our local resources, connecting them specifically. We were with health-related needs. Some of those students had never had well visits, had no vaccines, lots of dental needs. So we worked very closely with these families and connecting them with our local resources to get them the health care that they needed. And we saw that across the district in all of our buildings. We saw an increase in that. And so our nurses have, worked closely with those families to fulfill those health needs. All right. The other school nurse roles, as you can see, it does vary a lot per building. School nurses, we do a lot more than just work in our health offices, although that is our primary, role, and that keeps us very busy. But you can see we're involved in a lot of different areas, and each building uses their school nurse in a little bit different way, just based on what their needs are, highlighting attendance being a very important role that school nurses play as well with any of our students, that have health-related issues that are affecting their attendance, obviously. But that just kind of gives us a brief overview of what some of the roles that our school nurses play. And then getting into the district data here. So based on our total enrollment on June 1st, we had 2,261 students who reported a health condition. And so that gives us 46% of our students list a health condition. According to the CDC, most districts, it's not uncommon for about 40% of your students to have a health condition. So we kind of fall into that same category there. These health conditions range anywhere from, vision, just they need glasses, to our students that definitely have, chronic, more long-term health conditions. And these health conditions are reported to us from the online registration from parents that, when they report, when they register for school, they report the health conditions. And again, we don't always know if everything is reported to us. We learn things kind of as we go, but we do always encourage parents to definitely, make sure that they list any of those conditions, because obviously that can affect, their learning at school as well. And then here's a breakdown of the health conditions, and we track these specific conditions because the National Association of School Nurses advise these are kind of the meat of the health conditions. Not much change at all in these totals from the past 2 years. So I know, we were a little shocked when we looked at that, pulled that data, because collectively we have seen more health office visits that are associated with anxiety. And that could be that they even, and this is collective, like through, our elementary schools, through our high school. But sometimes those are just situational things, obviously, and they may not be diagnosed with anxiety, but they may just be in our office with a stomach ache or headache. Like we obviously, this has gone on for years as this, with those type of things revealing, with a physical condition. But we have definitely seen an uptake with the reason for health office visits being associated with anxiety. And obviously that could be so many different things, but possibly due to, the pandemic and being, the isolation and being away from school and all the changes. But we definitely we saw an increase in our health office visits associated with anxiety. But again, these numbers have not changed a lot for us. And then, so our total health office visits this school year were 76,271. Last year, again, based on the hybrid learning style and not having all of our students here, last year, we are up 33,261 visits from last year. So this is more pre-pandemic. So back to 2018-19 school year, our numbers were about 75,000. So we're going back to that, to the similar numbers. And then, as you can see, we do always, when we do a health office visit, we always have to close that visit. So either they're going home or they're going back to class. And of that 76,000, 2,125 were sent home. So as school nurses, our goal is we try to keep them at school if we can, because we know the best way for them to learn is to be in their seats. But obviously, some of them have to go home. And the EMS, there were just 6 that we had reported EMS calls for this year. Okay. And then this slide I always include just for the fact that school nurses are always involved. As a rule, if they're health related with a 504, just to assist with getting a formal diagnosis from providers, and then assist in any way to help formulate accommodations for students that have health needs. And then our emergency health plans are for any of our students that have life-threatening conditions. And we like to just list our numbers there. I think if you drag on it, it also will tell you what those numbers are. And obviously at our larger buildings, we have more. Okay. And the state requirements are unchanged. The dental screens, the hearing screens, vision, and immunization audits. The school nurses help to coordinate the dental screens. We will work with Micah and their iSmile program, and they come in and they assist us with our dental screens, as well as the fluoride treatments and that. We coordinate the hearing screens with our AEA. They come in and cover those for us. And then vision screens, the school nurses do those themselves, and then referrals as needed. And then, of course, the immunization audits, the wonderful immunization audits that we tackle at the beginning of each school year. And we always have very good reports with our immunization audits. We have parents that are very compliant, and we appreciate that so much. Even with our meningitis requirement, that this is, I think, like almost year 10 with that, required for 7th grade and 12th grade. We do still have some challenges there, but we always seem to work through that. And then Medicaid billing claiming, that's the other, it's another area where the school nurses work with our students that qualify for Medicaid, and we coordinate that. Each nurse does in their building. We had approximately 97 students this year that we billed on, and that gross reimbursement is still pending. So, and then in conclusion, this past couple of years have put the school nurses on the front line of keeping students and staff healthy and safe during a time of pandemic. In addition to the provision of direct care and education to students, school nurses' responsibilities include the development and implementation of new policies, social emotional well-being, and effective communication with families, staff, administrators, and community stakeholders. Just one thing that I did want to highlight also, I believe it's coming yet tonight, there will be a first reading of the stock EPI policy. And that is something that we have worked on to create. The Iowa School Board Association has already, they had a plan in place, and then we just made it our own. So stock epinephrine is used for students, for people when they have anaphylactic reactions. And based on statistics, 25% of anaphylactic reactions, first-time anaphylactic reactions, occur when kids are at school. And so, like, Johnny may never have had a reaction to peanuts before, and all of a sudden, we don't have peanuts in our school. We're not supposed to have peanuts at our school, but let's just say another student accidentally brought some in their pocket. And so Johnny got exposed to that, and they're having a reaction. Never before have they. So that student wouldn't have access to an EpiPen, at school, because parents provide those for us when their students are diagnosed with, life-threatening allergies. So with this stock EPI policy means that we will stock epinephrine in our health offices for those students or staff, if they have an anaphylactic reaction at school, and they, it might be an initial reaction, or as a rule, that's what it would be, as someone that's having an anaphylactic reaction that doesn't have access to an EpiPen. So several other districts already have these EpiPens. We've worked, to create this policy for our district, and one of our local pediatricians has signed the prescription for us to get access for the epinephrine. And we work through Mylan, which is a pharmaceutical company that creates the EpiPens, and it's called the I think it's called the school free EpiPens for schools is what it's called. And so they are free, and you just have to have the prescription for that. So one of our pediatricians will write that script annually for us, and we will renew those and replace those. And we'll have access to that in each building for students if that policy is passed. All right. Does anybody have any questions or comments on anything?
I was looking at your EMS visits. You said there were 6.
Yes.
And that means ambulance coming to the school and taking
Yes.
someone.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell me how many of those were the result of vaping?
Okay. I can tell you that none of those would be associated with that.
Because we've had a number of expulsions due to vaping, and they've described some pretty serious effects from that. Is that on the rise?
Yes, vaping is definitely on the rise. It is definitely on the rise, and we have had situations where we've had some very strong reactions, but it has not resulted yet in an EMS call, but it has resulted in a visit to a provider or to an urgent care facility, but it has not had to be, they have not had to be transported via emergency
ambulance.
personnel. Yes, but yeah, unfortunately, vaping is on the rise here as well as across the nation.
Right.
It's very real, very scary.
Any other questions? Thanks, Stacy.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Come on down, Ronnie.
Flying solo. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our Ladders to Learning, what we did this year. Obviously, we met with you last year. We did a kind of an abbreviated session last year, kind of with our 3rd and 4th graders to kind of work with some bubble kids who were close on their state assessments and to see how we could do. This year was a more full session. Just as a reminder, a full session for each student would be 45-minute sessions, 8 sessions, so it's 6 hours. It could be literacy, it could be math. If they had literacy and math, it was 2 different sessions. So that 45 minutes was going to be dedicated to literacy, it was going to be dedicated to math. I know that Tim at Franklin has actually done some SEL session work also. I don't know if he did any this time or not, but that was also in the piece that we could do. So looking at this year, and this goes all the way back to, I want to say we started in October, November. We had 218 kids total in the district that were tutored with 253 goals. So obviously you had students that had multiple goals. 190 of those goals were met. So we were right at 75% of the goals that were attributed to students that were met this year, ranged from 42% to 82%. So very good. I can't speak to the other schools, but I can kind of tell you the way that the approach we took at Anson. We really started doing a lot of work a couple of years ago with the science of reading and looking at reading from the building blocks. So knowing that the letter O makes this sound and that sound makes it put together with other sounds it's really going back to the building blocks and knowing that if you don't know how to pronounce those words and your phonics aren't strong, your reading isn't going to be strong. So, and the waterfall continues and your reading comprehension is also going to be weak. So with that in mind, we kind of looked at those kids who were really falling behind, whether it was, whether they had absentees, attendance, whether it was from COVID, et cetera. So we took those kids from the very beginning, and many of those kids, we actually tutored multiple sessions. So if we were seeing growth with our kids in October, then we started another session in February, and then we had some kids that actually went through 3 sessions, and the reason that we kept going is because we were seeing the growth. And again, the groups are generally 3 kids at a max. You could do 1, 2, or 3 students. We wanted to keep those numbers low. We wanted to keep it with kids with similar goals so that you could really zero in on what they were doing. We use district resources across the board, whether it was using some of their CKLA for literacy, maybe some Go Math pieces. Really Great Reading is another one that we use. We have done a couple of book studies at Anson on differentiated reading instruction and orthographic mapping, so we were able to use those pieces also. The number of tutors varied from school to school. I think we had 10 and 12 at different times of the year. I think the numbers probably went from 4 tutors to 10 to 12 tutors for every school during the year. I think the program is getting us what we need. Some kind of backstory data I can give you just for Anson. When the year started, after our first fast screening, our kindergarten had 38 kids that were designated high risk. And between the work of the teachers and the tutoring groups, when the year ended, we had one. So all the kids came out there. We had decreases in the high-risk kids across from those kids that were tutored at Anson. And, they very different goals. They might have been working on basic phonics. They might have had, R-controlled vowels or, Magic E. The goals were very specific that they worked on. Because obviously if you go through the science and you look at it, if they don't know that one thing, you can't go to the next. It's not going to work. It's a complete build. So if you're missing one piece, there's no need really to go forward because those kids are going to struggle. So, I think the program continues to do what we set it up to do. Again, it's going to look a little different at each school. Same overall structure with the 45-minute sessions, but I think we're still heading in the right direction with the tutoring. It's something that I hope that we can continue.
Questions?
How can we get it to continue?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How can we get it to continue?
It's just all about funding. And I think we're still good for a while. I don't know. I mean, that's...
Yeah, we have learning loss funding
Yep.
that will carry into 2024. However, one of our bigger challenges, I would say, isn't the funding piece right now. It's having volunteer teachers that are willing to do this.
We all saw a decrease this year. And again, I think it's what everybody knows. Everybody's tired. So this is we actually had some that took advantage and did it before school. So they would come in at 7:50 if the student was able to get there. And then we did some after school. And with that piece, in fact, if you ever see Rex around, he deserves a massive kudos for this whole thing because he had these schools tutoring and he had bus drivers for us every day. I could call Rex on Tuesday morning and say, we've added a student. He'd say, okay. And he would pick them up. So, it takes more. It's more than just us setting it up and our teachers doing it. Shauna's support, Dr. Schuette's support, Rex doing all those pieces is just amazing. So it took everybody to put it together. So yeah, obviously with the learning loss, it fits perfectly because we have, for the most part, targeted our kids that are low. Now, something I would like to see us possibly do in the future is at our accelerated kids also. We're not really in that position right now because we're still trying to close gaps. But it'd be really nice if we get to that point to where we're starting to close those gaps, we can start adding that accelerated piece also and really help those kids and give them something to do in the same vein.
And it kind of gets to the question I wanted to ask, which is, are you able to support all the kids that need support?
No. We're not. We were able to get 60 tutored this year, and that was great. And the majority of those, we started with, majority were primary, which will be our K and 1. We know in 1 there are some, you can look and see, data will show you that when they do their winter screenings, it dive bombs. They have so many more standards, so many more. They're starting to learn. The words are getting more. So this year what we tried to do was lessen the dive bomb, and we did. It went down this year, so it still decreased, but it decreased less. So yes, we would probably, to really be able to hit math and literacy, if we need to double our tutors, no doubt.
And you'd probably want to add second grade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and we tutored across the board too.
Oh, did you?
We just kind of the first ones, just because we know that winter testing period is the one where kids seem to struggle the most. For them, when we see trends, kindergarten struggles in the spring because they add what we call tricky words that they're really not familiar with. Now, these kids can decode, which means break a word down and do it like they could do anything, but these tricky words they haven't seen before and they're not familiar with, you can't break them down. You can't decode them. So if they can't decode them, and it made them slip back a little bit, but they didn't slip back a massive amount. So they're learning. But yeah, we have different goals, different grades.
So you emphasized kindergarten and first, but you actually served all the grades.
We do. Yeah, we do. With this past year, when we sat down and really talked about our school goals, we talked about our primary grades and trying to shore those up, those basic building blocks, because obviously there's gaps across. And when we meet as vertical teams, we see that there are gaps, K to 1, 1 to 2. This year we actually spent some of our last PD day meeting as grade levels. K met with one met with two, K met with, et cetera, to talk about the gaps they were seeing, to talk about what we were doing to meet those gaps, and to see what we were going to do moving forward to close those gaps. But yeah, we meet with all grades.
So when you say you need twice as many tutors, is that mainly a matter of funding or mainly a matter of not being able to find the tutors?
Yeah, you just can't get that many tutors. I think in my 10 years at Anson, we have had a peak. One time we might have had 18 tutors. That was early on. And, we were able to maintain 10 to 12 this year, and I was happy with that. So it's a struggle to get people to do it.
Ronnie.
Well, and we even went to the extent of partnering with a private provider, and they too struggled to find people.
Excuse me.
So you're using primarily existing teachers?
Yes.
What about using high school students?
We've talked a little bit about using them in a different way. And
It might be a
Shauna or
different
Dr.
program.
Yeah. Well, and we've used them in different ways during the day. Like, we'll partner and some kids will come over during the day and work with kids, et cetera, like that. We've never put them in the position here. I don't know if part of that may simply be a liability because they're not certified teachers and they're meeting after school, just them and the kids. So we've never really used them in this capacity.
Any other questions? And thanks, Ronnie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys. Okay, I am back. We have an approval, hopefully, knocking on wood, for our music curriculum adoption. I don't know if you remember, but Julie Feedy and I came and we explained the different programming that we'd like to put forward. And I had a surprise visitor in my office just this last week, and it's one of the new hires for elementary music. Believe it or not, I recruited her when I was at Aspirations getting my hair done, and learned that she was a music teacher. And it turns out we hired her, so that's great. Nice. And then I explained to her that we have Quaver, or that's what we're looking at adopting, and she about fell off her chair. She was so excited. And I was pretty impressed that she had heard of it. So that just gave me, it was like Christmas morning. So very excited to bring this back to you. If you have any final questions, I'm willing to answer them. I think the total was somewhere mid-80s. I can't remember. Might have to pull up the presentation at the very bottom. It should show the final number there.
$82,558.18.
Yep.
Are there any questions for Shauna?
And that price tag is for 6 years.
For 6 years, except that K through 6 Quaver program. We wanted to only move forward with 1 year because we have a brand new team. And we wanted to make sure those teachers bought into the program before really committing to it for the full 6 years. So if they get through that first year and they're all on board, then we'll propose to you that we continue for another 5.
So the 82.5 is for 6 years for Quaver.
The 82.5 includes everything that you see on this screen.
Just the 1 year subscription?
Just the 1 year.
Even though it says times 6?
I'm sorry, yes. I think so. Now I'm questioning myself. I might include it.
I think it does.
Anyone do that in your head? 5 times 6 is 30. It does.
Yeah, I think it does.
Like it includes all 6.
I think it's all 6 years.
It includes all 6.
Yeah. Any other questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the K-12 music curriculum recommendation as presented?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Wall Hernandez, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shauna.
Thanks.
Hello again, Dr. Ryan.
Hello, I have nothing to add. No changes since last time.
Everything's the same as it was
Oh,
2
okay.
weeks ago?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, it's,
Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Ryan?
no.
Can we just do these all at once?
Okay by me.
Is there a motion to approve the appendices as presented?
So moved.
Second.
McGinnis, Stanley, all in favor say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thanks. Dr. Schutte?
So the next topic, legislative priorities, is an annual thing that the board does. This is just a point of information and/or discussion, but I've provided you with our adopted school district legislative priorities from last summer, and then also the ones that IASB adopted in the fall during their annual convention, of which Sean serves as the delegate, and then the 18-page pamphlet on all of the possible legislative priorities that there are. So generally speaking, ours tend to be very similar to what IASB puts forward, with the only exception being, if you looked at ours last year, school funding was a priority from IASB. Mental health was a priority. A lot of times early childhood literacy will be a priority too. I don't think it was this past year. ELL, typically we have something related to additional support for English language learners and or at risk, or students who are identified at risk, or both. And 2 years ago, the legislature did make some adjustments both in flexibility and funding for at-risk, and so we kind of dropped that part of it and focused exclusively on English learners. It's probably not realistic that the state as a whole are going to adopt that as one, just because, again, we're kind of an anomaly, and many of the districts across the state, like our surrounding districts, don't have a significant percentage or number of second language students, but I still think it's something that we have to push to keep out there in hopes that we can get either additional years worth of funding or a higher supplemental amount attached to it. So that being said, on behalf of Sean or Sarah or myself, if you have any ideas of things that you would like to see us consider, probably at the July 11th meeting, we'll put forward some priorities for consideration. And if it looks like, and we'll have more substantive discussion then. And then if the board seems in agreement with that, then we'll ask for formal approval at the first August meeting. What happens then is that, like, we land on our 4 top priorities as a board, we submit those to IASB, and then IASB takes the priorities from all 316 or whatever districts there are now, and figure out what are the top ones that come forward. Then at the state convention, I think those are discussed and deliberated and voted upon ultimately to become the platform.
Yeah, IASB takes everybody's submissions and sort of ranks them, and what floats to the top is what they typically, the IASB Board of Directors recommends that the body adopts as the legislative priorities.
And that's in November, and typically we try in early December to have our local legislators come before the board where we can share our priorities as it relates to IASB or not, in terms of what's important for Marshalltown. So, any questions on that process or?
Sounds like not.
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah. Who wants to talk to the vehicle purchase recommendation. Dr. Schutte, Paulette?
Our Director of Transportation did find a used 12-passenger van for sale that he is recommending we purchase. And that would be purchased with PEPAL funds. And these used vans are hard to come by, so he's been looking for a while, and we were not able to locate one locally either.
And this is, as I understand, this is part of the typical, I mean, this is part of his replacement cycle,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Okay. Any questions?
Does anybody know why it has to be a used van? I think that is real interesting that state law requires that a purchase of a 12-passenger van needs to be a used van.
A couple years ago, there were some changes made, and I don't know if they make the new ones differently now, and they don't pass inspections or.
But at some point in time, our new vans are going to be used vans, and they're not going to pass the inspection protocols at that time either.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting.
I thought it was interesting too. I thought maybe it was a cost thing, but I wasn't sure.
I can go back and look that up.
Not that important. If somebody knew it right off the top of their
No,
head.
I thought it was interesting too.
Yep.
Is there a motion to approve the purchase of a used 12-passenger van in the amount of $52,944 from Billion Automotive?
Move to approve.
Second.
Lowry McGinnis, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0. Paulette?
All right, so you heard from one of our auditors, Christy Wick, at the last board meeting, and that was actually year 3 of a 3-year agreement with Hogan Hansen. So earlier this spring, I did send out requests for proposals to 4 different auditing firms that do governmental audits here in the state of Iowa. I received 2 proposals back, one being from Hogan Hansen and one being from another firm. We look at those and evaluate those proposals based on criteria that the Auditor of State recommends we use. Those criteria include like the organizational structure and size, qualifications, experience with similar audits, and things like that. So I did evaluate both of those proposals, and our current auditing firm, Hogan Hansen, did score a little bit higher using those evaluation criteria. So I would recommend that we continue with Hogan Hansen to provide our financial statement audits for fiscal 22, fiscal 23, and fiscal 24, the next 3 years.
And I guess I would just add to that, this was discussed at the Finance Committee meeting last week, and the Finance Committee was in agreement with that recommendation, so.
Thank you.
Yep. Questions for Paulette?
What was the cost difference between this and the other proposal?
For
Significant? I don't need exact.
For the 3 years, it was about $27,000.
Total? Mm-hmm. It sounds like there's something wrong.
Actually, this is exactly what I expected. And the 2 firms didn't break them out between partner time, manager time, senior time, and staff time. Our current firm did break it out between those 4 levels, and the other firm that bid only broke it out between staff and manager, so it's kind of hard to tell where the difference is there. But I also know that the other firm that bid is a lot smaller. They don't have near the staff that Hogan Hansen does. So.
Yeah, to some extent, it's a question of who's going to be conducting the audit.
And the capability of the firm, or?
In terms of number of people, you get what you pay for. And so if you pay bare minimum, you often get bare minimum, which then can lead to oversights, problems of things. And I've experienced this in 2 different districts where either we switched to a lower bid or went with a significantly lower bid than what like Hogan Hansen bids, both in people time vested into reviewing the books. And in both of those other cases, problems came from that lack of thoroughness and oversight.
The number of firms that are actually doing governmental auditing is going down because it's very costly to train and get the CPE that those governmental, those staff members that are doing governmental audits. You know, it costs a lot more to train them. So, yeah, I wasn't surprised by the cost at all. This is typical.
And is the other firm, like, are they doing a lot of governmental audits, or this would be something significantly different for them?
They're doing about the same. They're starting to do more. They're a younger, smaller firm, so.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I liked the fact that Hogan Hansen has a large staff. So you're not necessarily just going to get like, 1 or 2 people that work on it. There's a lot of eyes on the audit. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think in terms of hours that they were suggesting they were going to take, it's about the same number of hours. It's just a question of what level of staff is putting those hours in on your audit.
Okay.
And they're large enough that often it's different eyes from year to year too. It's not the same people coming in every time that make up that team. Whereas in smaller firms, it is always the same people that are looking at it.
Other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve a 3-year contract with Hogan Hansen for the annual financial audits for fiscal years 22, 23, and 24 as presented?
Second.
Hernandez Wall, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0. Paulette, you're on fire tonight.
Yeah. Lots of assignments here. So I would recommend approval of a 3% salary increase for Superintendent Schutte for the upcoming 22-23 school year, and that is the same percent increase that the certified staff received and the other administrators received. So recommend the 3% salary increase and that the contract be amended to commence July 1st, 2022 and end June 30th, 2025.
Any questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the superintendent's salary or contract amendment as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Lowry McGinnis, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paulette, can you talk to this one too?
I certainly can. So we have not in the past really aligned our payment of support staff substitutes, and when we talk about support staff substitutes, too many Red Bulls today. basically are talking about custodians, substitute paras, substitute food service, substitute secretaries. And so what we were paying those groups of individuals has been on the low end and has not been adjusted in several years. And obviously with the labor market challenges right now, it's really hard to get people anyway. So we are recommending that we move to align the payment, the hourly wage for those support staff employees to match step 1 of the respective salary schedule for that classification. So like if we have a sub-custodian, they would make the same wage as a step 1 brand new custodian. That way we don't have to address it on an annual basis either, or it doesn't get so far behind. It adjusts annually as the salary schedules are increased or changed. So we would recommend aligning those to the salary schedules.
Bonnie, you had a look on your face that seemed to be saying that makes too much sense to
It
not have done before,
sound
right?
systematic, doesn't it? It almost
Get
sounds-
paid for the job.
Yes.
Get paid for the job.
It actually seems to make sense.
Are there any questions for Paulette? If not, is there a motion to approve changing the hourly support staff substitute compensation to be aligned with step 1 of the respective salary schedules as presented?
So moved.
Second.
McGinnis, Hernandez, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
It was me.
It was you? I had like 3 people. I just picked a name.
I thought it came from over there.
All right. We'll make sure to note it.
McGinnis, Stanley.
McGinnis, Stanley.
Okay.
Still passed 6-0. All right, Dr. Schutte.
Yeah, so over the course of this past year, we had been speaking with Marshtown Police Department, particularly Chief Tupper, and about creating digital maps of our school buildings for emergency management purposes. We have architectural maps or maps that are like architectural that we use, but obviously those take significant effort to update since they're by hand, essentially. And so Chief Tupper and the Marshtown Police Department actually paid for Marshtown High School to be digitally mapped so that we could see it, experience it, et cetera, this past school year. And at the time that we had that done, we asked them to do walkthroughs and to give us a quote for what it would take to digitally map the rest of our buildings as well. Essentially what winds up happening, in addition to having the digital maps, which are multi-layered based on how many floors there are, it then results in us also doing a relabeling of the exterior doors so that they are labeled in such a way that it speaks the same language that emergency management talks when they're coming to an emergency. And so we're currently in the process right now at the high school working with a local vendor to get the doors renumbered and or labeled at the high school. $32,205.35 was the quote to have the critical response group out of, I believe it's Wisconsin, to do this work for us as they've done at the high school for the rest of the district. My hopes are that by getting this quote approved that we can get on the top of their list or near the top of their list. I know they're busy nationally, but we were the first building in Iowa actually to use their services this past year, and would certainly be the first district to as well. As you probably saw, there was a lot of information regarding the governor's press release and $100 million going towards improvements in school safety and infrastructure, and digital mapping actually, or they called it critical incident mapping, was one of the different categories for which districts could look at making improvements. So we're kind of ahead of the curve with that. And we would propose that we use the general fund to pay for this so that we keep the ball moving and get in the queue for having this work done, and then we can later seek reimbursement through those special state funds. So.
Other questions for Dr. Schutte?
The only question I have is, you've done a great job, safety in mind, Dr. Schutte, but when I look at the proposal, the one building we're going to take possession at some point, sometimes we get a better deal if we package it together. Is there any way we can do it for the Orpheum at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's we can do it for the Orpheum after we've taken possession of that. There really isn't a price break per se. They kind of price it by number of floors that they have to do and size of the facility.
And then at some point, I'm kind of interested with what the governor's put out there, and you've always been ahead of the curve. But are you still kind of learning more, kind of what the governor's come out with right now? As there be a future recommendation?
Yeah, there will be other things down the road that'll likely come from that, but right now we're still waiting to get details on what was shared. What was shared and when it was shared was news to everybody, including us. So usually something like that comes out, and then sometime later the details come out regarding how to access it.
Other questions or thoughts?
Dr. Schutte, with that said, do we have like some sort of assurances that these funds will be allowed to pay for digital mapping?
Yeah, I talked to the Department of Education Director Ann Lebo about this specifically because my concern was, and in some cases, they don't want you to supplement what you've already done or already doing, but they assured us, especially since we were maybe one of the first to do this in Iowa, that in one way, shape, or form, we will get reimbursed for this digital mapping, and she did not want us to wait or slow down the process as a result of waiting to find out details from the state.
Perfect.
Is there a motion to approve the proposal from Critical Response Group in the amount of $32,205.35?
So moved.
Second.
Wall, Stanley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0. I have to assume that you're here for this, right, Mr. Iskrig? Yeah, I'm back. Okay.
This thing on? Hello? Okay. Yeah, Ryan Isgreg, Marshalltown Activities Athletic Director. Here today to seek the approval for the scoreboard that is needed in the Marshalltown High School pool. So first of all, I want to thank Amy and her team for doing a lot of work and supporting this project. We've, of course, redid our ceiling last year in the pool and the lights, and it's a lot brighter in there. The ceiling looks great. The new air conditioning unit, it's not 95 degrees in there during a meet, which was awesome. Feels great in there. Really the last piece of the puzzle is a scoreboard, which is not working. We don't have a scoreboard right now in the Marshalltown High School pool. So we went this whole boys season as well as the middle school season without a working scoreboard. So we had a system that was kind of, I guess, written, right, Amy, from an Emerson person several years ago that kind of talked to a projection system and would display the times up on a projector. So now we're looking to kind of, I guess you could say, join what many other schools have of a actual scoreboard and a video board. So if you've been to the Marshalltown Y, what we're looking at, they have the timing on one end of the pool they display the times of the swimmers, and then on the other end of the pool they have a video board where they can display The same thing, times, but also they can display graphics, visit the concession stand, or basically the video board, you can do about anything on there. You can put pictures of the kids, you can make hype videos, you can display a Bobcat graphic, you can advertise on it and generate revenue through advertisements. So you see a lot of schools these days who have these video boards in their pool. So basically that's what it is. It's a timing display on one end and then a small video board to go with it. So the total cost of the project is about $92,000. We looked at 45, or about half of it coming from the capital project fund, and then the other half we have raised money through Marshtown Bobcat Booster Club, as well as some private donations. So we've raised about over half of the money to go with it. So again, it's a great upgrade for the pool. The bid we're looking at is through Daktronics. There was one bid that came in. Daktronics is, as you know, maybe almost any scoreboard you see at a major sporting event is through Daktronics. So they're a very nationally known company. It was the one bid we had. We sent it out to Amy, I believe 27 different vendors. And then of course the installation was Media Quest signage, which they've done the scoreboard in our roundhouse as well as our baseball field. Amy, anything else you want to add?
Questions?
Is this just the display, or does it also include the timing system and the scoring actual system for console?
Yep, the request for proposal that we submitted does include it'd be the OmniSwim controller.
Yep.
And then, which I think is probably the one reason that Daktronics came the most to the surface, but so it comes with the controller, and then there's a media player along with it, kind of a receiver that can do Bluetooth and other inputs and that sort of thing to play on the video board. And then it comes with a computer as well to run the meet manager.
Okay.
And then there'll be the high-tech computer as well.
And if you've been to any of our meets at the high school, or just any meet, sometime at the Y, you get a lot of people at that table, and our setup in the pool now, there's wires everywhere, there's computers everywhere. So yeah, this is a lot more simple, I guess you could say. You can run the whole thing with just a laptop.
Yep.
I'd like to say, Amy, thank you for the time you spent. Finally get in front of the board. Members of the community have been talking about this, excited about this project, and some of the donations from these business owners, individuals is outstanding, and over about half the money, and I'm excited about the potential of this project here.
Yeah, the support's been great. We use the term friends of swimming a lot. There's a lot of good friends of swimming to help support this. And of course, we were talking about earlier, the Bobcat Golf fundraiser is going on right now, or it's about to be on Thursday. So we, of course, did our best not to solicit too many people. But of course, there were some people that were more than happy to support Bo. So that was great.
This be installed and ready for the girls' swimming season?
Well, don't want to promise that. As we know, with the just production delays, and there's a good chance it might be a while. I think they said about 10 weeks or so before, but I've been surprised too with other things we've ordered recently. So the goal is to get it up as soon as possible, obviously. And if we need to find a temporary solution for a scoreboard for the girls' season, we'll look into that. But I know the girls are really just want to start in the pool this year.
They just like to be back
They
in the
just-
pool, wouldn't they? Yeah.
Right, because last year they're at the Y. I think the year before we had derecho. They couldn't start in it because the power was out. So I talking to Coach Nelson. She's like, I don't really care. I just want to be in the pool to start. But if we have a scoreboard, that'd be great too. So,
Each of the last 3 years, we spent some time in the Y.
right. So that's the goal this year, to get the girls starting in our pool.
Any other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve the purchase of display and scoring equipment from Daktronics for $86,171 and installation by MediaQuest signs for $5,800?
Move to approve.
Second.
Lowry McGinnis, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hello, Todd.
How are you?
Good. You?
Oh, wonderful. Busy day. I was a little more casual attire because I was outside with Amber and everybody else today running around.
Well, it's summertime, Todd. We'll let a little bit of casual dress go, okay?
All right. Well, as you all remember, back in December, I come to you asking to see if I could go out to TSP and have them develop us a walking track for Fisher Elementary. TSP come back, design that, along with a alternate one for a set of stairs leading from the upper to the lower playground, and then also a second alternate to remove and replace a backstop. I reached out to about 10 different companies, probably a little more than that. Obviously, most of our main local contractors. I did receive back 3 actual proposals, which I have up top there. Tim Nichols Construction was my lowest, also a local contractor, in that amount of the $78,582.02. That would do, like I had mentioned, the base bid, which would cover our track, and then the alternate would be the stairs from the upper to the lower playground. Right now, I had several of them that didn't want to do the backstop portion, but as we mentioned, we can always, after this project's done, we could consider and see if there's actually even a need to redo that.
Other questions for Todd?
Yeah, a couple questions. It seems like it's been a moving target on this project, on the price. And I know at one time we talked about kind of like the swimming project here, that the PTO was going to pay part of it. Where are we at on that?
Yeah, when I had spoke with the Fisher PTO,
Yep.
I think at that time they were looking, because I had kind of given them a rough estimate of $80,000 for the project. They were going to try to raise $20,000. I think at that time, weren't they basically had about $10,000 or half of it for that to help with it.
Are they committed to do that, or?
They were committed to do on that, and like I said, at the time, Kelsey, I just mind blanked on what her name was I was dealing with, said they had had some of that and was wanting to raise the additional, but like they had said, it would probably take them a little over a year to get the full funds for it.
Kylie Leisure.
Oh, Kylie, yes.
So we necessarily don't have a commitment out of them?
No, they're committed to funding 20,000.
Okay. And is this a project you think we can stall for 6 months as the economy's kind of crashing? It's gonna.
Well, and kind of as you had mentioned, with prices going all over, I just found out, because the original architectural estimate fell just over $60,000.
Yep.
For what he thought could do the whole thing. I've just found out recently with some of the smaller concrete projects going around, a lot of them now, a yard of concrete's running roughly $150 a yard because everybody's upcharging everything for it. I think that's why this was slightly higher. I did have the two, which I was happy, you know, of course, the one was an out-of-town contractor I knew.
Would your recommendation to maybe, should we punt this down the road 6 months? Well, because I think there could be more opportunities, I think, down the road as the economy goes backwards here.
And that might work. The only thing with that is since they heavily use that space, then that would put it, you know, then pretty much over into the next summer, almost at that point. Because I wouldn't want that much activity while school was in session out there.
You know, if all we were looking at was the construct bid, which even though the costs have gone up, I kind of felt like was a bid telling us they didn't really want to do it, but if we're willing to pay that, they do it. You know, I think these other two bids are reasonable under the circumstances. I know in talking to architects regularly, they don't necessarily see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of when things are going to significantly come down. So I don't know that there's any guarantee that a year from now we're going to be looking any better than we are right now. And every year a certain percentage goes up on these projects also. So our plan is to use Pearl funds to support this project, and the degree to which we're supporting it versus PTO, PTA type funding is pretty comparable to what we did with the Rogers project, which was much more expensive, but there was fencing and some other things included in that as well.
Is there anything with the architect we could have done differently, or they could have done differently? I mean, that's like a 20% swing on a small project.
Well, really, I mean, he had suggested doing, you know, early on, because obviously I think the stair proponent was going to be the most tricky to put in there. He had suggested doing more of like your landscaping, you know, your railroad ties and timbers, which I look at that as being, you know, yeah, it might look nice, but we might be working on it 10 years from now. Part of this and part of the stairs that I had set in also, currently they was kind of having an issue with runoff from the upper playground coming along that retaining wall for the lower playground and continually washing all of that out. This would actually even solve that problem by giving a hard surface for that water to run to get down to those storm drains that are in that lower playground a little more effectively without eroding everything in the process.
Other questions? Is there a motion to approve the bid from Tim Nichols Construction, base bid in the amount of $61,070.75, and alternate one in the amount of $17,511.27 as presented?
So moved.
McGinnis Hernandez. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Motion carries 5-1.
All right, thank you all.
Todd.
So we had one policy come back from the last meeting as a first reading, 200.3 responsibilities of the Board of Directors. If you recall, we had one paragraph added at the recommendation of IASB to reflect the quasi-judicial role that boards play. We did not make any other adjustments to that policy than what was shared with you at the last meeting. So I'd recommend the board approve that policy and waive the second reading.
Any questions? Is there a motion to approve 200.3 and waive the second reading?
Move to approve.
Lowry, Hernandez. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0.
As far as the initial reviews, and these were Sarah's, but she's not here, so I had agreed to take them. 405 we have 4 policies that are in our licensed employee category, the board policies. Very minor adjustment made to the first 4, 405.5 licensed employee workday, 405.6 licensed employee assignment, 405.7 licensed employee transfers, and 405.8 licensed employee evaluation. In all 4 of these, the only adjustment that we're making to them would be adding after superintendent or designee, because in most of these cases, either the HR director and or in some cases, the building principals are directly responsible for the decision there, which is then approved by the superintendent. So I would recommend consideration with those minor changes, which exist in many of our other policies, that the board just consider marking those as reviewed with that slight change.
Does anybody have any questions about any of those policies? Does anybody have any objection to marking those policies as reviewed rather than bringing them back next week, or not next week, in July for approval?
No.
Okay, they are marked as reviewed.
And then we have a new policy, and Stacy kind of referenced this during our annual review today. 804.5 stock epinephrine auto-injector supply. This is being recommended by ASB. We had Stacy review it. She was comfortable with it. We would bring this back to you for a first reading in July.
Any questions about that one?
No.
Then we've got the calendar of regular school board meetings for the 22-23 year.
Those meetings follow the same pattern, first and third Monday of each month, with the exception of January and July that have one meeting.
Right. And then obviously September's on a Tuesday because of Labor Day, and January's on a Tuesday because of Martin Luther King.
Right.
Yep. Questions about those meeting dates?
Is this normal for most districts to have this many meetings, or do they usually do one a month, or is it normal to have 2 a month?
Larger districts like ours generally always have 2 meetings and 7-member boards. Some of the smaller districts might have 5-member boards and once-a-month meetings, but usually they have additional meetings for curriculum purposes and other things. They have more maybe special work sessions since they only have 1 meeting a month.
Is there a motion to approve the 22-23 regular school board meeting calendar?
So moved. Second.
Was that you, Bonnie?
Yeah.
Lowry, Hernandez. It was, wasn't it? Okay, you were looking at me like, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0. Adam.
Hello again. And I realized earlier I did not mention that it was Yesenia Alvarez Zamora and Leticia Herrera who were the students who had that project that was on display. I realized after I sat down, I was like, wow, I didn't mention their names. So just want to put that on the record. So for just a couple brief updates, I'm working on, I had mentioned last time, I was working on meeting with the principals about doing social media updates this summer. I've successfully met with all but I think 2 or 3 of them so far. So just got to wrap up those last couple meetings. I'm learning a lot about the systems that they have in place, and just explaining some of the changes that are coming as regards to that item number 4 goal on the communications and marketing plan. So that will be exciting work. And then also in the middle of creating the annual activities calendar. That's a project that I do every summer, just outlining concerts, activities, school board meetings, just general events that we can label out ahead of time for folks. Those will be distributed to all of the school buildings for students as well as visitors to pick up. And then as far as website work, continuing to push to get that done, get all of that done expediently. So we do have revised logo mock-ups that Juicebox has sent to us, so we're working on getting that narrowed down and finalized as soon as possible. So that's what I have for updates this evening.
Any questions for Adam?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Committee reports. The Finance Committee met last week. Zach, was there anything we talked about at that we didn't talk about tonight? Okay. Looking at reminders, the chamber banquet is this week, Wednesday evening. Dr. Sheeter, remind me what time?
5 to 6 is social hour, 6 to 8 is dinner and the program at Midnight Ballroom.
Okay. And then remember, we've just got the one regular school board meeting in July on the 11th. Well, we did a lot. What have we done this evening to improve education for students in Marshalltown?
Well, in the fitness area, we've done the thing for the swimming pool, the walking track for Fisher.
We adopted the K-12 music curriculum.
We heard about some adjustments that were going to be made with regard to English learners and upping services there for them, and just looking at the impact of growth. We're on an uptick, so that's great news.
Yes, it is.
I liked hearing about hearing about the ladders to learning, when just talking about how many people it takes within our whole organization to make that happen, and how willing people are to just step up and do things kind of outside of their normal schedule to support the students.
That's important.
Anything else?
I would just like to take Leah's idea of high school students working as tutors, and how could we maybe work that into some silver cord hours for graduation, if we're doing it during a time where they can be supervised. We don't want to have, we want to be safe, and,
Yes.
we want them to be supervised, but maybe like from 3:30 to 4 o'clock. If there's somebody still in the building, even till 4:15, to do some of that tutorial services after school or during study hall times.
Yeah, there are some very effective routines with the science of reading that could be done one-on-one by a high school student with some training and oversight, and they would be very effective.
Some sort of connection with the new paraeducator program, where we're already targeting high school students to move into a local paraeducator. It just has a nice tie-in if we can make something like that work.
I think it could.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Absolutely.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Lowry, Stanley, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Make sure you get that last part and then we.